I am here with Michael John Warren, filmmaker behind Freediver. I was holding my breath throughout this. Sorry for the pun, but literally, it is such a nerve-wracking documentary. I'm just a
Good.
watcher. You're the filmmaker. Was it nerve-wracking for you because you're making this
Yeah.
project, and how did you get through your own nerves experiencing this whole thing?
Yeah. I mean, look, you don't do what I do without being pretty good at staying calm in crazy situations. But this one was particularly unnerving. A couple times in my career, I've met an athlete who is about to step into a very dangerous situation. And it's hard to get to know someone and then watch them go off to do that thing that could kill them. And there was a certain moment in this. There's a lot of times. Every time he went under, I was like, "Oh, I hope he comes back." And there was one time, which leads to one of the sort of emotional climaxes of the film, where Alexey announced what he was going to do the next day, and was a pretty bold announcement. And I didn't sleep that night. That next day happened. I didn't sleep the next night either. It was like 2 nights of no sleep because I was so stressed about what was about to happen and what was happening. And so, yes, this was a very nerve-wracking project to take on, even for sort of a jaded documentarian like myself.
Well, here's the thing. He has such a drive. Just working with him, interviewing him, were you able to unlock what motivates him? Especially, obviously, in your documentary, you talk about the continuing link with his mother, Natalia.
Yeah.
Did it? What resonated to you about his story? Because it's like sort of a unique experience from an athlete's point of view.
Yeah, I mean he's the greatest living freediver, and I forget how many time world champion, but people like that are not normal people, that just aren't. And so you're already dealing with a personality type that is very driven, very focused, and just doesn't sort of respond to normal factors or elements in the way that everyone else does. So he's almost machine like. They call him the machine for a reason. He is kind of a machine, but he's also completely aware of everything that's happening, what's happening in his body, what depths he's diving to. He is really aware of it. So he's not insane at all. He just knows everything really, really well. And when in regards to his mother, so Alexei's how do I say this without spoiling anything in the film? But Alexei's mother is the most sort of highly regarded and greatest freediver of all time, and she plays a really big role in his life. I mean, that is probably he probably wouldn't even be in freediving if it wasn't for her. And so he's trying to honor her legacy while also sort of besting her in an interesting way, and it's a really interesting mix. It's also his mom, so it's like it's his competition, but it's his mom. I don't think he would ever say he was in competition with his mother, but of course he is on some level. So yeah, that's sort of how I see it.
So I'm just going to play the devil's advocate and give you an
Yeah,
uneducated
please.
take. Well, so someone will say Freediver, a lot of it is set in the ocean, in the beautiful waters. Sometimes the movie's going to film itself. That's not true. What are the elements that we as viewers are not seeing as far as the overall visual design and preparation that you and your crew have to do to make this documentary work?
Yeah, well, it's filming underwater is probably about the hardest thing you can do in cinema, or one of them. It's very, very difficult. There's the opening scene, the big first dive in this film happens at 512 feet below the surface of the water, which is incredibly deep. And so I'm pretty sure we as a film crew set a world record for the deepest high quality image of a person out in the open ocean at 512 feet below. Even James Cameron in all of his films that he's made underwater has not done something like that. And so it's about as hard as it can get. My crew was tirelessly working, very prepared, enormous preparation. Because a lot of times you're setting up things that you're not going to be able to talk to people when they're underwater. And so, like, it's not like you can just call out, "Hey, switch to this," And so there was a lot of what we would call sort of dry run-throughs on the beach, where we're drawing out what we think is going to happen and how we're going to handle it. It's about as hard as it gets. It took to make this film for me, it was 22 flights 8 different countries, more boats than I can even count, 3 years of my life, and a really dangerous scrape with a super typhoon in the Philippines that allowed us to be able to make this film.
What was that like? I'm Filipino. I'm thinking.
Oh, you're Filipino.
I haven't been there in 10 years. I want to get, but that segment, I'm thinking, get out immediately. What was you and your crew feeling during that moment?
So we were on the island of Camotes. I have a mug of it over there. That's why I had to look. There's a lot of islands in the Philippines, as you know. To get there, we had to go to another, is it Cebu? Like we had to go through like another larger city and then take boats out to the island we were on. And as the typhoon was bearing down on us, we had to debate as a production, are we going to try to get back to a major city as this typhoon hits, or are we going to stay on this island? And when we did the math, we realized that the path out of there led through that really pretty limited city, and we thought we'd actually get stuck there. We'd rather ride it out on the island because we were in a hotel that had 2 floors to it. So even if the island flooded, we at least could be up a floor. And we just decided to stay put for that because it would just actually made more sense than running was to stay where we were.
That's amazing. Just in general, Michael, what does it take to be? You talked about your crew, an effective leader, and then on the flip side of that, also gain the trust of Alexey as far as this documentary goes. Is it just like putting in the time like you did with those 3 years? Is that a big element to both those factors?
Yeah, I think being a good leader, at least in a creative sense, is I'm like a professional talker, right? Like I obviously have vision. Like any director who's worth their salt has a vision, but having something in your head and being able to articulate it is one thing. Articulate in a way that people care about and want to do it with you and for you is another whole thing. Part of how you do that is inspiring the people around you, having a good vision, inspiring people with it, but then being organized and professional enough that they feel like taken care of as well. It's not just we're going to kill ourselves for Mike Warren's crazy idea of this Freediver film. Instead, it's just like, well, he understands what he's doing. He shows a command of the subject matter and seems to care about us as well. So hopefully that's how my crew felt during this. And I think that's part of being a good leader. Building trust with someone like Alexey, first of all, it's a vibe. And that word is so overused right now. It doesn't mean anything anymore, but it actually is a vibe. I think I have a personality type that people feel somewhat calm around. And hopefully I have a command of my skill set in a way that they also feel sort of, this person knows what they're doing and they're going to ask me some good questions. So with Alexey, he was pretty trusting the whole time, but by the end of the production, there was one last interview we did where he said a bunch of stuff he hadn't said to me yet. And it took us a long time to get to that place where he was saying things that I'm not sure I know he wouldn't have said to me earlier because I'd asked the same question a year earlier and I got a different answer. So sometimes it's time. It's also just confidence and command of what you're doing and building trust with someone. They want to know that you know what you're doing. You don't want to give your best stuff to someone who doesn't seem like they have a clue as to what they're going to do with it, right? So you have to be good at your job, and then you have to also be really good at asking questions like in an interview. That's how you start to get those answers.
Do you also have to be really good at, the cliche is you have to kill your darlings. I'm sure you have hours of footage that you wanted to make. This could have been a 10-hour friggin' thing, but this is a great tight documentary. Is that the big struggle of just knowing when to edit, even though you're editing some excellent stuff as well? Is that a key as far as being a successful filmmaker?
Yeah. So I was an editor before as a director. And sorry for my phone chirping. And I don't actually know how anyone directs a documentary without a mastery of documentary editing, because I am literally editing before I even have the cameras out. I'm editing on the page before we start filming. While we're filming in real time, I have my plan for what's going to happen that day, but things change. And so the editor in me knows, like, oh, that thing that just happened actually is more important than what we were going for this morning. I need to switch to this now. And I'm constantly editing the film live in my mind as I'm filming it. And then we go to the edit suite and we start cutting then, and we're like, oh, that thing we thought was so important actually isn't, switch it out. I don't know how many times I watched and re-edited this film with my my editor, but it was, hundreds, and you're just constantly staying flexible. You have to know what you want. You have to keep your eye on the end goal, but you have to remain open, eyes open, ears open, just, oh, this is better now. And then you have to also let the thing that you work so hard for, that you think, that you really, 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 really strive for on set, just doesn't working in the edit suite. Chuck it away, because the only thing that matters is the film that you saw. And you're going to hear what it took to make this film, but the people at home don't know that, like, oh, this part's in here because the director worked really hard on it. No one cares. All they care about is what the film is.
Yeah,
so you have to let go of a lot of things.
I'm just a layman, so is part of the success also being patient in post and having that time to actually let it?
Editors are not normal people as well. Like, you can't be a normal person in editing. You have to be enormously patient. You have to be willing to sit in windowless rooms for hundreds of hours. People often say to me, hey, I want to come to the edit suite. I'm like, you can. You're not going to like it. It's not as this romantic thing that you think it is. It's like people hunched over keyboards in dark rooms, and like it smells weird because no one's left the room in 2 weeks. And in the modern era, we're working a lot more remotely, but the edit suite is in the edit process you have to be naturally patient and naturally methodical. You cannot be this person who has a nervous energy and be an editor. It's just not how it works.
Michael, final question is a two-parter.
Yeah.
First off, I don't know what the poster is behind you, but can you name one of your all-time favorite movies? And what is it about the specific movie that personally resonates with you? And the second part of that question is, when people watch this movie and they like it and they go onto your IMDb or resume and want to see another film that may be of yours that may be underrated, can you give that person a sort of a lead to that?
You want to know what one of my favorite movies that I didn't make is, or one of my films?
Oh, both of them. So both of them.
Okay.
The first one is like one of your all-time, and then the second one's from you.
Yeah, I think my favorite documentary, I'll say documentary because I'm a documentarian, is When We Were Kings, the great boxing film, is an absolute masterpiece. The poster behind me is from Sundance last year. My series Lala, the history of Lollapalooza, was at Sundance. I got a poster on the wall. And if somebody wants to watch some of my work, I think if you're into the adrenaline junkie side of what this film has, then you probably want to watch my series on Netflix called Fearless, which is about bull riding, which is one of those projects where I got close to people and then watched them go do something incredibly dangerous. Wanted to tell them, like, don't go out, don't ride the bull, get back in here. You don't need to do this. So that's a good like thrill junkie thing. But I also do a lot of music stuff. Most people actually kind of know me as a music guy, even though I do a tremendous amount of sports work. And I do I do like big concert films as well. I don't know. I'm lucky enough that I get to operate in a bunch of different lanes in documentary, and it's really hard for me to tell somebody what they're going to like of my work. I'm really proud of the film I made 2 years ago for HBO, which is called Spring Awakening, Those You've Known, which is about the Broadway show Spring Awakening. We made it. We only had 5 shoot days to make the film. I had to be at Rough Cut in 4 weeks, which is an enormously accelerated calendar. And it's a really, really, like, you cannot watch that film and not cry. And if you do, you should go to the morgue because you're dead.
Michael, thank you so much for your time. And very quickly, When We Were Kings, when I do a rewatch, is it because it hit on all those levels, boxing, the time and place, the editing, overall package? Is that why?
Everything. I mean, can you believe that stuff even happened? It's the raw footage alone is fascinating. I haven't watched the film in many years. I talk about it a lot, so I should probably rewatch it. But it's really good storytelling, just an unbelievable scenario that happens in that film.
Michael, thank you so much for your time. Freediver, available
Greg.
on digital December 7th. Looking forward. Good luck, and I think it's going to be really popular. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah,
Take care.
Froze a little bit, but thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care.